Picture this. A soldier in the trenches of World War I raises his pistol at an enemy running towards him. His pistol is caked with mud, soaked from the rain, every inch of it begging to jam. He squeezes the trigger just before the enemy reaches him, and it fires. Not once, not twice, but again and again, flawlessly when his life depended on it. Decades later, in the thick jungles of Vietnam, a Marine braces against the recoil of a heavy machine gun. With one pull of the trigger, the air is torn apart with a roar so relentless it drowns out the chaos around him. Fast forward once more. A convoy in Afghanistan, mounted to the turret, is the same .50 caliber monster that's been spitting fire since the 1920s. The battlefield has changed, the uniforms have changed, but the gun? It's still the same. What ties these moments together? Not a general, not a government arsenal, but the mind of a single man. John Moses Browning. This is the story of how that quiet genius from the frontier of Utah became the man who invented modern firearms. To truly grasp Browning's genius, you must understand the world he was born into. It was a time carved by violence, survival, and the relentless east-to-west push of a tumultuous nation. His father, Jonathan Browning, was no ordinary craftsman. By 1852, he journeyed west following the Mormon exodus, setting up the rough trails of Ogden, Utah, a small blacksmith and gunsmith shop that stood as a frontier stronghold in a world of thin defenses. With each hammer blow of his anvil, Jonathan molded survival, and tools from raw metal. Young John Moses absorbed that world early. By age 7, he was entrusted with real engineering, filing metal, repairing weapons, and absorbing his father's grit and craft. John later recalled, half laughing,
"We ridiculed some of the guns we fixed, but it never occurred to us to make better ones. He was too old, and I was too young."
A confession of youthful defiance and the spark that changed everything. Then came the rifle made from scraps. One day, some say when he was 10, John assembled a working firearm from discarded parts. He brought it home, and that night, it put 3 prairie chickens on the family table. His father teased him,
"You're going on 11 now. You can't make a better gun than that?"
But that joke only lit the fuse. No pun intended. School couldn't keep pace with his ideas. At only 15, a teacher confessed that John had exhausted his instructor's store of knowledge. And just like that, the workshop became his classroom. By his early 20s, he and his brother Matthew had turned his father's shop into a company, the Browning Brothers, employing family and building 600 single-shot rifles, refining inventions in the dusty workshop before the world knew his name. Then came his first patent, on October 7th, 1879, for a self-cocking single-shot rifle, granted when he was just 24, and it changed everything. Winchester snapped it up, setting the stage for decades of revolutionary designs. The late 1800s was an era of upheaval and innovation. America was moving from frontier skirmishes into the industrial age. Railroads stretched across the continent, and firearms, tools that shaped the nation, were entering a period of reinvention. Repeating rifles like the Henry and its successor, the Winchester, had given settlers and soldiers a powerful edge. These rifles, capable of firing multiple rounds without reloading, were sometimes called the guns that won the West. But even these technological marvels still had limitations. They were slow to evolve, complex to maintain, and not always reliable under the harshest conditions. That was not good enough for John Moses Browning. His vision was simple, but uncompromising. Firearms should be rugged, efficient, and above all, reliable. This mindset brought him into contact with the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, the powerhouse of American firearms at the time. Founded in New Haven, Connecticut, Winchester had built its reputation on the Model 1866 and the Model 1873 rifles, iconic weapons carried by cowboys, lawmen, and even native warriors. By the 1880s, Winchester dominated the repeating rifle market, and they were always on the hunt for new designs. And Browning would become their most valuable designer. Browning created a string of rifles for Winchester that would become legends, capable of handling the largest hunting cartridges of the day, something previous designs struggled with. Then came the Model 1892, a lighter, faster lever-action carbine. There's even a famous story here. Winchester's vice president, T.G. Bennett, challenged Browning to deliver a prototype in 90 days for $10,000. Remember, back then, that's a lot of money. Browning countered though, 30 days for $20,000. 2 weeks later, a working rifle arrived on Bennett's desk. That design became the Model 1892, a rifle so enduring that Hollywood would later put it in the hands of John Wayne in dozens of Western films. Perhaps the most famous Winchester of all time. It was the first repeating rifle designed for smokeless powder, the new propellant of the industrial era. Its 30-30 chamber gave it more power, more range, and more reliability than the black powder rifles that had come before. The 1894 wasn't just a firearm, it became a cultural icon, and many families still pass them down as family heirlooms. But Browning was never satisfied. Lever-action rifles had limits. So he began to ask, could a gun reload itself? At a time when soldiers still worked with bolt-action rifles by hand and hunters reloaded single shots, Browning was dreaming of firearms that bordered on science fiction. His answer came in the form of the Browning Auto 5 shotgun. It was the world's first truly successful semi-automatic shotgun, patented in 1899. The design used the shotgun's own recoil to cycle the next shell, meaning a hunter could fire 5 quick shots without manual action in between. To sportsmen, it offered speed and reliability. To soldiers, it hinted at firepower the world had never seen. When Browning first presented the Auto 5 to Winchester, they balked at his demand for royalties instead of a flat payment. So he turned elsewhere to FN, a Belgian arms company hungry for innovation. FN took the gamble, and in 1903, the first Auto 5s rolled off the line. They quickly earned nicknames like the Humpback and the Wild Mule for their unique profile and powerful recoil. The Auto 5 wasn't just a hit, it stayed in production for almost a century, one of the longest running firearms in history. When Browning was filing his patents, much of the world was still relying on bolt-action rifles and black powder cartridges. Technology barely advanced from the Civil War, yet he was inventing the very principles of modern automatic firearms. The recoil and gas operation systems he pioneered became the foundation for nearly every single semi-automatic and automatic weapon that followed. In many ways, he was designing the future while much of the world was still clinging to the past. When the Colt 1911 entered service, it was answering a brutal lesson. You see, in the early 1900s, during the Philippine-American War, US troops found their .38 caliber revolvers lacking the stopping power needed against Moro fighters, who often fought to the death in close combat. Reports told of soldiers emptying their revolvers into charging opponents who still managed to close the distance. That's terrifying. The Army demanded a new pistol with greater firepower. Browning's answer was the Colt M1911, chambered in .45 ACP, a cartridge he designed specifically to put an end to that problem. When the pistol was adopted in 1911, it was immediately clear it was something different, durable, hard-hitting, and easy to maintain. Its first true test came in World War I. American doughboys carried it into the mud-filled trenches of Europe. In those filthy, chaotic conditions, many sidearms jammed, but the 1911 kept firing. Stories started circulating of soldiers praising its ability to save their lives in the last-second moments. By the war's end, the pistol had earned an almost mythical reputation. Its ruggedness and power made it a soldier's trusted companion, and its influence spread far beyond the battlefield. The Browning automatic rifle, or the BAR, was born in the final months of World War I. You gotta understand, until its arrival, automatic firepower meant bulky, crew-served machine guns that anchored squads in place. Soldiers on the move lacked a true automatic weapon they can carry into battle. This all changed though in 1917. John Browning himself stepped onto the field to prove he had the solution. Before rows of skeptical military officials, he fired bursts from his prototype while walking steadily forward. It wasn't just a demonstration, it was a revelation. A single soldier could now deliver the kind of suppressive fire once limited to teams behind heavy guns. The US Army ordered it immediately. The BAR saw its combat debut in September 1918. During the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, America's largest operation of the war. Doughboys carried it forward through German defenses, firing it on the move, clearing trenches and providing a kind of mobile firepower the world had never seen before. Though the war just ended weeks later, the BAR had proven its worth. It never ended up leaving the battlefield. The BAR became an iconic squad weapon in World War II and Korea, storming the beaches of Normandy, cutting through hedgerows in France, and spitting fire in the frozen hills of Korea. Soldiers praised it for its raw power and reliability. One veteran of World War II put it simply,
"The BAR was our best friend. When it spoke, the enemy kept their heads down."
But the BAR's story isn't confined to the battlefield. In the 1930s, America's most notorious outlaw couple, Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow, got their hands on stolen BARs from National Guard armories. Unlike the Thompsons favored by other gangsters, the BAR fired the massive .30-06 rifle cartridge, designed to tear through sandbags, helmets, and even light cover. In the hands of Bonnie and Clyde, it became a weapon of terror. They used the BAR's devastating firepower during robberies and shootouts, shredding through police cars and outgunning small-town lawmen. One officer recalled,
"We might as well have been firing pea shooters. The BAR cut through our cars like they were paper."
Law enforcement quickly realized they were hopelessly outmatched. The outlaw pair's firepower forced police to upgrade their own arsenals, marking a grim moment where a weapon built for the trenches of Europe became infamous on America's backroads. Bonnie and Clyde themselves were ambushed and killed in 1934. But even then, officers reported recovering multiple BARs from their car. The BAR's dual legacy, as both the backbone of US infantry firepower and the weapon of choice for America's most infamous criminals, cemented its place in history. The story of the M2 50 caliber machine gun begins with World War I dogfights. You see, pilots needed a weapon that could shred through enemy aircrafts, but existing machine guns lacked the punch. The US Army requested something bigger, and Browning delivered the 50 caliber BMG cartridge paired with the M2 heavy machine gun. Although the design was finalized after World War I, its first widespread use came in World War II. By then, it was everywhere, mounted on jeeps, tanks, aircraft, and even naval vessels. In Europe, Allied troops relied on the M2 to mow down German aircraft and defend convoys from strafing runs. In the Pacific, it armed bombers and fighters, giving American pilots a massive edge. One of its most famous early uses came during the Normandy landings in June 1944. Allied forces rolled M2s ashore on landing craft, blasting through German defenses. From there, its reputation only grew. Soldiers would nickname it the Modus, a weapon that could tear through walls, vehicles, and even light armor. Its combination of range, power, and durability made it irreplaceable. The most extraordinary part, that same M2 used in World War II is actually still used a lot today. Whether in Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, or Afghanistan, Browning's heavy machine gun has been the soldier's hammer, unchanged in design for over a century. Each of these guns entered the world at a turning point. The 1911 gave soldiers the stopping power they needed in close combat. The BAR put portable automatic firepower into the hands of infantrymen. The M2 created a weapon so powerful and reliable that it reshaped tactics across land, sea, and air. Together, they didn't just arm soldiers, they redefined how wars were fought. Browning's genius wasn't confined to the US. In 1897, he partnered with FN Herstal in Belgium, marking the start of one of the most important relationships in firearms history. At a time when Europe was on the brink of global conflict, Browning's designs were snapped up eagerly. His FN Browning high-power pistol, completed after his death, became one of the most widely issued military sidearms of the 20th century. Used by over 90 nations, it was a standard firearm for Britain, Canada, and countless other armies well into the Cold War. The global spread of Browning's designs mirrored the spread of industrial warfare itself. As nations armed for the 20th century, many of them were using Browning's blueprints. Colt, Winchester, Remington, FN, nearly every major manufacturer built guns on his work. It's no exaggeration to say Browning armed the world. His ideas transcended borders, showing how one man's inventions could ripple across continents and decades. In November 1926, while working at FN in Belgium, John Browning collapsed at his workbench. He died of heart failure at the age of 71, in the middle of perfecting what would become the Browning high power. Even in death, he was still creating. By that point, he had over 120 patents. His work ranged from lever-action rifles to machine guns to pistols, an unmatched portfolio. But more important than the number of designs was their durability. His creations didn't just work, they endured. The 1911, the BAR, the M2, all of them became staples of the 20th century. To put it in perspective, when Browning was born, US cavalrymen were being outshot by Comanche arrows. When he died, armies were preparing for mechanized warfare with tanks, planes, and automatic weapons. And many of those weapons were his. That arc from arrows to automatic rifles is what makes Browning so unique. He was a bridge between the frontier and the modern battlefield. John Moses Browning wasn't just an inventor, he was a visionary. From his father's workshop in Utah to the battlefields of 2 world wars, his ideas shaped the way soldiers fought, the way nations armed themselves, and the way firearms are designed to this day. You see, most inventors are remembered for one breakthrough. Browning is remembered for dozens. His designs didn't just keep pace with history, they drove it forward. That's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like down below and subscribe if you want to see more videos. I drop an episode every Monday. That's it, guys. Until next time, stay curious.